What is Terraria? The question that's plagued humanity for generations, even more controversial than 100 men or one gorilla. So I'm here to answer it. This video will be explaining what Terraria is for entertainment if someone wants to know whether or not they should buy it, and because why not. Before we get into this, I just want to say this video is actually to celebrate 1 year of YouTube. Yes, 1 year ago today, when this is being uploaded, I posted my first video. So thanks so much. I hit nearly 500 subscribers in 1 year. And if you want to see my first video, though it is pretty bad, click the link in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Terraria is a 2D side-scrolling action-adventure sandbox game where you can do literally whatever you want in a 2D plane. I mean, Terraria's motto is literally dig, fight, explore, build. Nothing is impossible in this action-packed adventure game. It's a 2D pixelated game, which makes it look very similar to games around 40 years old from original consoles like Super Mario Bros. Or Contra. If you don't know what Contra is, think Call of Duty, but 2D and old. I'll put some footage on screen. It's also comparable to Minecraft, and many people like to call it 2D Minecraft, but that comparison is really just wrong. The similarities, yes, they're both pixelated adventure games with a block building system, but Minecraft is truly infinite, allowing you to travel millions of blocks, having a lot more on the adventure side and building side, especially having an extra dimension on it, while Terraria is limited in size on the world. And while Terraria is focused on boss fights and enemy fights with some very intricate ones, Minecraft's only true bosses are the Ender Dragon and Wither, as the other ones don't have health bars. Plus the Warden and Elder Guardian barely drop anything actually useful. In Terraria though, you have 33 bosses, including main bosses and event bosses. Not all of them are required to beat the game. In fact, you can technically beat Terraria with only 5 bosses, though that makes it extremely difficult, so I would recommend fighting most bosses. Most people also claim that Terraria ripped off Minecraft, which is also false. Minecraft did enter development 2 years before Terraria, but they're so different, it's highly unlikely that Terraria was an attempt to copy Minecraft. Plus, they both had tags on the home screen saying to try Terraria or try Minecraft. Moving away from the Minecraft comparison, Terraria is sold on almost every modern platform, including Xbox One, X and S, PlayStation 4 and 5, Nintendo Switch, and it's on Steam, which allows you to play it on Mac, Windows, and Linux. It's also on Android and iOS, and a couple older consoles that I won't mention them all, but one of them that's notable is the 3DS. For the prices, this game can be very different depending on the platform. In USD, on console, it's about $20 to $30 base price, but often goes on sale. It's also currently on Xbox Game Pass, so you can play it on there if you have Game Pass. It costs $5 on mobile and $10 on Steam, but frequently goes on sale for $5 on Steam. And trust me when I say this is the best $5 you'll ever spend. Along with that, Steam comes with a modding community, with hundreds of mods to make the game even better. And they are all free. Calamity is probably the most notable one, adding tons of bosses and content to the game, basically doubling the length of Terraria. Terraria is the current 11th best-selling game of all time. It was once in the top 10, but was passed a few years ago. The current list is Minecraft, GTA 5, Wii Sports, Ark, Mario Kart 8, Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, PUBG, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Sims, The Oregon Trail, and then Terraria. Now that we've made it through a large intro, let's get into the true question, what is Terraria? Where I'll show some footage from a full playthrough with over 3 hours of footage that I edited down to this video, showing off what Terraria truly is. In Terraria, you start out by choosing what you want your world to be, with a few different settings. And the first ones are pretty self-explanatory. The difficulty. with Classic, Expert, and Master mode, which just get harder as they go. But there's a fourth one, which is Journey mode, and I'll explain that in a minute. The other important option is Corruption or Random. These are the world's evil biome and will spread throughout your world and try to corrupt it all. In your first playthrough, just pick Corruption. It's the original one, and that's what I would recommend for any beginner. And after that, I usually go random on my playthroughs. Then you can pick the world size, with small, medium, or large. And of course, the large is bigger than small, medium's in the middle. But unlike almost every other game out there, your character isn't tied to your world. Let me explain. In most games, for example Minecraft, when you join the world, your character is already there, and everything in that character's inventory is tied to the world. You can't bring that character into a different world. But in Terraria, you can do that. So now you can make your own character with a couple other difficulties, and then you can join as many different worlds as you want with one character, and that character keeps any items that you got from the worlds in their inventory. You can also join the same world with many different characters, as long as they're either journey characters on a journey mode world, or a normal character for a normal world. And there are a few difficulties for your characters. In Classic, when you die, you only drop some coins, which are the currency in Terraria, but you keep any other items in your inventory. In Medium Core, you drop all of your items when you die, similar to most other games. Hardcore is almost identical to Minecraft by deleting your character, but it does not delete your world, so you can rejoin your world with a different character and you won't lose all of your builds. The final mode, which was also on the world creation menu, is Journey mode. Journey mode characters can only join Journey mode worlds, and it's very similar to something like Minecraft's creative mode. In Journey mode, you get some settings like changing the weather, enemy spawn rates, and a few other cheat items on the menu. But the important one is called Research. You can research any item in the game, which deletes them from your inventory. But for, say, a pickaxe, if you research one of them, now you can duplicate infinite of them. For a dirt block, you research 100, now you can duplicate infinite of them. So it's a fun way to play the game without outright cheating, since you do have to use items to duplicate them. Now that you've created your character and world, it's time to play Terraria. Upon joining, unless you did a secret seed, which I won't go over in this video. If you want those, you can go to some other videos, but you'll spawn in the middle of the world, almost always in a plains/forest biome. And you always start with 3 items, unless you're playing Journey mode, which spawns you with even more: the copper axe, copper pickaxe, and copper short sword. Unlike many other sandbox games, you can't just break trees, blocks, and other items with your fists. You can't even attack with them. If you want to do really anything, you need some type of item, tool, or weapon. So you could start out the game by chopping down some trees and fight your first enemies. Slimes will probably be one of your first ones, and they have really slow health and damage, and very easy AI to defeat. Upon joining, you might also notice there's another person in the world. That's the guide. This is what's considered an NPC, and despite the name technically defining any character in Terraria, NPC means non-player character. But in Terraria, an NPC, also referred to as town NPCs, is something like a villager in Minecraft that you can talk to and usually buy either items or a service from. The guide, though, is one of the most useless ones, as all it does is give you vague hints on what to do next in the game and some crafting help. To get other NPCs, you need to build an NPC house. And here is a basic one, but for specifics, refer to the official wiki. After a while, NPCs will move in, but you do have to complete a specific requirement for every different type. For example, the merchant, you have to have at least 50 silver coins in your inventory. Speaking of silver, that is the currency for Terraria, coins. You can use them to buy from NPCs, and you get them from selling NPCs, fighting enemies, finding them by exploring, and more. The currency is pretty straightforward. You have copper, silver, gold, and platinum. And the value is also straightforward. 100 copper is 1 silver, 100 silver is a gold, 100 gold is a platinum, making platinum worth quite a lot, and there's nothing better than platinum in vanilla. After getting some wood in Terraria, you'll need to go mining for some ores. There are a few different ores in pre-hard mode and a few new ones in hard mode. If you don't know much about Terraria, you might be saying, but Likey, isn't hard mode just a difficulty in the settings? In basically every other game, that would be true, but in Terraria, the game is split into two main parts, hard mode and pre-hard mode. When you spawn into the game, you start out in pre-hard mode, and after defeating a few bosses, you'll defeat the Wall of Flesh boss. Yes, that's the actual name. And then the game will freeze and load into hard mode, where there are new ores, enemies, bosses, items, NPCs, biomes, basically everything. And everything gets harder. More damage, more health, more defense. Once you make it into hard mode, the game truly begins to start, and basically every pre-hard mode weapon you have, with exemption from a few, becomes useless. But for now, we're in pre-hard mode since you just joined, so you'll want to mine as many ores as possible, find chests to loot, find new weapons, tools, items, basically anything you find you'll want to collect. If you're a true beginner, I have some beginner guides, and I'll have a playlist of those linked at the end of the video. But for now, the most important thing you'll find are life crystals. These are basically heart containers from Zelda. Increase your total health by 20 until it gets to a maximum of 400 with life crystals. You can upgrade it a little bit later in hard mode, but we'll talk about that later. Now that you have some new armor, some health, maybe a few weapons, it's time for your first boss fights. This is what Terraria is all about. Fighting bosses to save the world. Kinda. And the first boss you're technically supposed to fight is King Slime. The order for pre-hard mode bosses is King Slime, Eye of Cthulhu, Eater of Worlds, or Brain of Cthulhu, depending on if you're on Corruption or Crimson World, Queen Bee, Deerclops, Skeletron, and Wall of Flesh. If you recognize Deerclops from the game Don't Starve or Don't Starve Together, we'll mention that later on in the video. And we'll also go over the hard mode bosses later on. But after you defeat Queen Slime, you should get a few new items though after you defeat it. But this boss doesn't drop anything great. As I said, it's really just an introduction into Terraria. The next boss that you're supposed to fight is Eye of Cthulhu. You can only fight it at night, so don't try to summon it during the day, as King Slime can be fought at any time. Now is either the Brain of Cthulhu or Eater of Worlds. And as I said, the first few bosses, and most of the pre-hard mode bosses, are truly an introduction to Terraria's combat, and are very simple compared to bosses later on in hard mode, but your gear also levels up. Soon you'll defeat the Skeletron boss, and enter the dungeon. As you unlock it from Skeletron, get upgraded gear, and use that to defeat the Wall of Flesh. And the thing about Terraria is, the dungeon may seem useless, because you're entering hard mode, all that gear is going to be useless now. But the dungeon, and most every structure in Terraria, upgrades once you get to hard mode, including some events which I'll show soon. And now that we're getting closer to hard mode, you might have noticed on some of your weapons, they have statistics under them when you hover with your mouse. It probably says next to damage, either melee damage, range damage, summoner, or mage. You might have wondered, what are these different damage categories? Well, these are called classes, and there are 4 main ones with a few subclasses, but I'll only go over the main 4. These aren't very important in pre-hard mode, as most armor increases all damage and defense, but once you make it into hard mode, you'll have to choose what armor to use, since most sets will only affect one class. Some armor will affect ranger, some will affect melee, some will affect multiple, but most only do one. Here's a basic explanation of every class. Melee class, it uses swords, spears, and more. It does high damage, and despite the name, many melee weapons shoot out projectiles, so it isn't really melee, but many people do the challenge of true melee, which means no projectiles. It usually is the highest defense armor out of the 4 other classes, and usually does the best damage, making it the favorite class of many players. Next is Ranger. Ranger uses a combination of guns, bows, and some other weapons that use ammo and shoot projectiles. Ranger armor has much less defense than melee, but once you reach the end of the game, the armor will give you something called stealth mode, which makes you do higher damage, and a couple other buffs for stats. The damage from guns and bows is changed by the type of ammo you use as well. Some give special effects or apply debuffs to enemies. Chlorophyte bullets, for example, have a homing effect, so you never miss, but do extremely low damage, only doing 1 damage more than musket balls. Ranger is usually my go-to class because I really enjoy using the flamethrower once I get to hard mode. Now for the summoner class, and this one is interesting, using minions, which you can summon and will fight for you, and you can also use whips. The minions can be summoned using mana if you have the correct staff, and you can increase the amount that you can summon at once using buffs, armor, and accessories, so you can have even more minion slots. The whips allow you to hit an enemy manually, and your minions will target the last enemy you hit with a whip, plus allows the player to directly deal damage. You can also use summons for extra damage, since you don't have to actively use them and they fight for you. You can use them while using another class to get a little bit better damage, and they don't affect any damage of your main class. The biggest problem with Summoner is it has the lowest defense of these classes by far, so if you can't dodge attacks, you will get shredded, which results in it being hated on in the community. Finally, the Mage class. The Mage class consists of spells, staffs, tomes, and many different types of weapons that use your mana bar to attack, which can also be upgraded with Fallen Stars, and once you get a high mana, these weapons can do insane DPS with some of the highest piercing damage in the game. The defense for mage armor isn't as good as melee, but it's still pretty good, compared to some of the others like Summoner and Ranger. And those are the 4 main classes. Personally, on your first playthrough, I would recommend melee. You get the highest defense, high damage, a little bit of grinding to get some of the better weapons like the Terror Blade, but it's totally worth it since you can tank enemies and do super high damage. But another thing about Terraria is you don't have to use the same class for the whole game. You can do melee class for this boss, the next boss change to Summoner. You can change classes every boss, and usually don't have to grind for too many resources. In this playthrough, once I made it to hard mode, I did a combination of ranger and melee weapons. And for the final fight, I switched fully over to melee since it's much better for Moonlord. Another great feature about Terraria is you can go from boss to boss really quickly without grinding for gear if you're good enough, and just beat the bosses, beat the game really quickly. But if you don't want to practice and get really good at fighting bosses, all you gotta do is grind a little bit, and the next boss becomes really easy. The gear you can get is always better than the next boss that you're gonna fight, so you can always be overpowered by the next boss if you're willing to put in the time. The required boss tier list for hard mode is the Mechs, which is Destroyer, Skeletron Prime and the Twins, Plantera, Golem, Lunatic Cultist, the Pillars, and finally Moonlord. I'll skip through this part of the game since it doesn't have too much related to the topic of this video, and I don't really want to spoil the whole game for beginners, especially once it gets to hard mode, all the boss fights, and what you need to grind. A topic I do want to go over is how the Goblin Invasion changes in pre-hard mode versus hard mode. So I'll put some side-to-side clips here of the Goblin Invasion pre-hard mode versus hard mode. Hard mode will be on the right, pre-hard mode on the left. And just look at the different enemies, how much harder it gets. But my gear is still good enough to the point where it isn't really hard to fight them. So despite being the same event, it still gets harder in hard mode. And it's still pretty easy because you have upgraded gear. So it stays pretty fair throughout the game. And it's this way with about every invasion in the game that has a pre-hard mode and hard mode version. You fight in pre-hard mode, it's pretty easy, you can take it out. Once you get to hard mode, new enemies, the old enemies get upgraded, new bosses, stuff like that. I'll show off the old one's army in a little bit, which is a big example of this. And there's plenty of lore to Terraria, especially with all the bosses being named Cthulhu, the Moonlord, so there's actually a lot to read about the game. I won't go over here, because I also don't know the lore to the game very much, I mostly focus on gameplay. but once you finally get far into the game, you defeat the Moon Lord and save the world. And just because you beat in the game, that doesn't mean there's nothing left to do, because Terraria is just such a big game. There's new gear to unlock once you beat Moon Lord, new items to farm for, upgrades to events, there's so much. Another great feature of Terraria that you can experience after Moon Lord are the crossovers. There are tons of items from massive and small games, plus one from real life. Some of the games are Stardew Valley, Don't Starve Together, Minecraft, Core Keeper, Dungeon Defender, which has the most content, and more. There's also some from an actual yo-yo company called One Drop. As you can see here, I'll put some footage on screen of the old one's army. This is basically an entire tower defense game inside of Terraria, and it's super fun to play, especially because it upgrades every few bosses. After you defeat Golem, you unlock the final part of it, and it gets very hard, but you get new gear for it. So I'd recommend trying out the old one's army for any player, especially if you like tower defense games. And that's a great thing about Terraria. You have so many things to do even after you've beaten the game, plenty of events that you don't really ever get bored of the game. You can go back and play different modes, you can play different classes, do challenge runs, you can even go play some secret seeds. If you're on PC, you can do mods like Calamity, and then you get even more game modes to play. And there are just so many by the community. The biggest two, of course, being Calamity and Thorium, but another great one is the Fargo Soul mod, which has an insane crafting recipe with thousands of items needed. And that's a really fun challenge run if you have some free time. I've spent a lot of time recording this video, editing it, scripting it so much, and the biggest thought I had while making this is, what truly is Terraria? What's going to be the end of the video? What's going to be on the outro? And honestly, I think Terraria can be anything. It's a video game where you can do basically anything that's possible in a 2D game. You can build massive structures, you can fight bosses, you can do tower defense games, you can make insane weapons using the complex wire system similar to Redstone. You can do challenge runs, you can play mods, you can even develop mods if you want. You can do anything with Terraria. Honestly, Terraria is the ultimate sandbox game, similar to something like Minecraft, where you can do anything possible in a 2D game. There are even mods out there that give you a 2.5D perspective, and there's actually a Minecraft mod that gives you a 3D Terraria experience. So my conclusion is Terraria can be anything possible in a 2D game. And it's totally worth getting if you've never tried it. And if you do have it and haven't played in a while, go try a new challenge run, play through the game again, maybe try Calamity for the first time. There's so much possible in a game that seemingly on the surface is simple and can give you hundreds of hours of game time. Thanks so much for watching. This is my 1-year anniversary video, and I'm almost at 500 subscribers. But once I do hit 500 subscribers, I'll have a new series of a March Madness bracket of weapons from pre-hard mode that you, the viewers, are going to be able to vote on for which one ends up winning the final bracket. But I'm still not quite to 500 subscribers, so if you subscribe, I can get the series out soon, and you'll get to participate in it as a viewer. And if you want some other videos, I have some beginner guides that I'd mentioned a few times earlier in the video. That playlist is on the bottom right. The bottom left are overrated and underrated Terraria items. The top left is what YouTube thinks you want to watch next. The top right's the subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more.